none of this matters. It's like, no, what does matter? What does matter about this art? So that you stay with it, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you think no one's ever going to read it, watch it, look at it, and care for it. And then it's the same for ourselves and our bodies. It's like, what matters here? Yeah. That's all she asks.
We all contain magic. The question is, how do you contain your magic? I'm your host, Sonia Bayon. I'm a transformational coach, yoga educator, singer, and embodied alchemist. I'm here with you today to share the stories, the practices, and the awakenings that truly contain her magic. Let's begin. Hello, beautiful ones, and welcome to episode 12 of Contain Her Magic. Today's episode is very special. We are going to respell your reality with Lisa Lister. This is a conversation about creativity, devotion, and the art of holding magic. Today's guest, Lisa Lister, is a writer, creatrix, and guide whose work is devoted to helping women remember their magic and remember that they are magic. She's the author of several best-selling books, including Witch, Self-Sorcery, Venus, and now her newest book, Respell Your Reality, a deeply creative, rhythm-led exploration of self-creation where language, perception, and devotion become tools for shaping the life we live. Lisa's work sits at the intersection of creativity, ritual, and lived experience. She speaks to the parts of us that have been taught to distrust our bodies, override our rhythms, or dilute our power, and invites us back into a more instinctive, cyclical, and embodied way of creating and becoming. Through her writing, her art, and her voice, she reminds us that creativity isn't just something we do, it's something we live, something we remember, and something we continually recreate ourselves through. And that's exactly what I'm so excited to explore together today. Lisa, welcome to Contain Her Magic.
Oh my goodness, thank you for having me.
I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today, as I'm sure our listeners are too. And yeah, I just wanted to say that I first discovered you from a book that I bought for my daughter. Yeah, and I bought
Which
her
one?
the book, Witch.
Best mama ever for buying Witch for your daughter, by the way.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So I know it may not be what one would normally think of as a mother-daughter gift, but in my case, I think it made a lot of sense. And I want to bridge that into this idea of lineage. Now, I know that in Venus in particular, another one of your books, you speak a lot about the wild rose line and your love of France. Now, I'm here in Quebec, so I'm just southeast of Montreal in La Belle
Bonjour.
Province. Yes, bonjour. And yeah, I just wanted to see with you what your French connection is. I see "I love you" in French on your wall. For those of you who are, if you're tuning in, this is an audio podcast, but you have that great poster saying "I love you" in French. So talk to me about France and the wild rose lineage.
Oh, that's not the best way to start a podcast ever. But I want to speak to that little piece about the lineage first. I think it's so important. So so much is spoken about witches. And then when people speak about that, yes, I am from a lineage. I'm from a traveller gypsy lineage. So potentially, my mama was a witch, my nana was a witch. They would not have called themselves that. And they'd be furious at me for calling myself one. But that was part of me changing up the story for this lifetime, for that lineage and for this matriarchal line that has kept secrets, had to keep the magic secret. So for me, that was a big part of why I wrote Witch. Now in Venus, when I'm talking about the wild roses, when I'm talking about my love of France, it's one, I think, really important that we recognize we've got a spiritual lineage, right? So many of us are looking to the things that we seek, the things that we're interested in, and then being like, where are they rooted? Is that mine to work with? Is that mine to use? Is that mine to and for me, as if people are asking me about my lineage, there's always, if there's deep reverence for what you're doing, then yes. And it's recognizing that we all have access, for so many of us, that lineage of magic has been disconnected from us, has been buried underground for over 4 millennia nearly now, right? And it's like, actually now we have to remember that we might not have access to the rituals and magic of our foremothers. We have, but like we might not know them right now, but we do have this lineage of wild roses, what I call wild roses anyway, what for me is very much the Venusian lineage that each and every human has when they look at something that's really beautiful, when they remember like, oh, this is who I am when the world is burning, right? Like that they can still find the beauty, that they can still make art, that they can still show up because they're part of something that's way bigger. It's a remembered magic. And that's what I find through the Venus cycle. And that's what I found through working with Venus. But Venus took me in a very as practical as like astrology and astrocartography, which is the astro lines of planets mapped onto your experience, right? So astrocartography, they'll be like your Venus lines will be in, for me, for instance, are in France, right? So part of me went on a little adventure. I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go on this adventure, and then found where like my Venus line went through, and like how you experience life so differently when you're on a piece of land that you are enlivened by, where you are recognized as beautiful as the scenery that you're, the scenery, but like the lifestyle, that eating everything so slowly, savoring. And look, you can call it a stereotype, you can call it a cliche. They are cliches and stereotypes for a reason. Everything about that culture knows how to live. Versus so much of what the culture we've been taught around, like we have to work to live. They're very much about live. Well, from my personal experience, it's very much about enjoying the life and only working so that we enjoy the life. So
so it's
very long-winded way of getting us back there.
It's wonderful, and it needs to be explained because I know a little bit about astrology, but what you're saying, just to clarify, is that within your astrological chart, Venus draws a line that corresponds to a location, to a place.
Various ones.
Well, that's interesting. Now, I don't know where that is.
Oh, and I mean, and it's true for every planet. Yeah. So, if your girl wants to work, you look for Saturn. But if you want to enjoy the good things, and and then it can get really layered because there's like 4 lines essentially, and those 4 lines all have different energetic versions of Venus, and it can get wild, but I'm obsessed by it. I love it. So yeah.
Well, I'm definitely going to look into that. What I do know is I'm a 0 degrees Sagittarius Venus.
Oh, lovely. Evening star or morning star? Do we know?
Morning star.
Oh, yum. Yeah. That's what I call like that Joan of Arc energy. So I'm an evening star, which feels much more like laid back. That morning star energy is like, yes, I'm going to go out and get everything. I love it.
And if our listeners want to learn more about that, you do discuss it extensively in Venus. So they could get a copy of your book. That's great. Well, that's it. And the thing that we have in common was I was conceived in France.
Oh la la.
Oh la la.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah.
And what part do you know?
La Vallée de la Loire.
Ooh, yum.
Yeah, wine country.
You've got the accent, so.
And I actually live in wine country in Quebec as well. So, yeah.
But isn't that interesting that it's mirrored almost? Like, so Venus is this essentially this mirror. And so there's reasons sometimes why, potentially you've landed on French soil and you're reflected back to you where, whoa, yum. I love that.
Yeah, that's it. So when you make these connections, I think it can take you into a lot of interesting territories, figuratively and literally. So in keeping with this idea of the wild roses, now you talk about this as a lineage of women whose stories have been possibly distorted and reshaped, even erased. What happens when we begin to remember those stories differently?
Well, what happens first is that you're probably called like a conspiracy theorist, or you're probably called names because, or like, oh, you're imagining it or you're making it up. And when I talk about the wild roses, I'm often asked, like, but is that a real lineage? Is that like the Rose lineage? Is that the Mary Magdalene lineage? Like, yes, and yes, and yes. and it's made up, and it's very real, because that's what we are able to do as women, right? And that's why, like, the Venus story, and when I talk about Venus story, she's a mirror, like, but she's almost like a faceted mirror, like a mirror ball, like a disco globe. Like, there's so many versions of her because she has shapeshifted through millennia and millennia so that she still exists, so that we still remember, like, so that we can take a little part of it. So if you're interested in the Roman Venus, there's like a way in. If you're interested in that beautiful kind of Venus of Willendorf, that big earthy mama Venus, right, there's a way in. Like, if you like Botticelli, the piece of art, you know, with all her flowing hair, like, there's versions of Venus for everything and everyone. Every culture has one. And it's a way in. And for me, that's exciting, around recognizing that we have our personal mythos, and then there's these women throughout history who've had to, like, write themselves to some extent, right? And then those stories, those versions, and Mary Magdalene's one of them, are distorted. We're told about that person differently. You've just got to look at social media now to see what happens to women and their stories. Like, it's happening, and it's reflected to us in all of the ways. But what Venus is so brilliant at is showing us that we get to write the myth. Like, she knew that through Roman times, she had to be like a virtuous, virginal, pure, like, virginal in the kind of pure sense, not in the true sense of the word, but much more in that kind of patriarchal overculture sense. And so she knew that. And so that's how she still gets to exist. Christianity, I'll be Mary. I'll be the Black Madonna. I'll be like it's like she's just this beautiful shapeshifter of energy. And for me, it's been the proof, that all the proof I've needed at witnessing these women through history. When you read these stories, most of which, like, are told by dudes, but if you can get underneath that, and then you remember that story, because you will remember it, like, there's something in it. Mm-hmm. Like, if I watch Madonna, the 80s version of Madonna, with the cones and all of that good stuff. Yeah, exactly right. And the voguing. Like, when I look at her, I'm like, I know a version of which I'm being told, but when I watch her, I feel a different sensation to what I'm told about that woman, right? And so that was, for me, was the first, as I've been kind of mapping my own experience, like, that was one of the first moments where I was like, yeah, that's not it. Like, what you're saying is not it. Which has just been made me fascinated forever in women being able to tell their stories. And that's what, this is all I'm here for, is for women to share and tell their stories this lifetime in the way that is real, felt and true to them, versus, like, how we're told to tell a story. Yeah. And then to recognise what our story is underneath everything that we're told, whether that's societal, whether that's familial, and whether that's to ourselves, because of what we've been, how we've grown up. The stories we tell ourselves about ourselves are going to spell what our experience of life is. And so unless we are telling a really good freaking story about ourselves, we're not going to get to live a good story. I want for us all to experience and live, like, a really good freaking story. Because if we don't write it, and I promise you, if we don't write it, someone else will, and it will very rarely be in our favour.
That's an excellent point. And what I hear from you also when you say this is, women as the potential and power of creativity in this world carry the power to be able to create in the way that we choose, and that perhaps that's what's been forgotten. And I want to really get into this idea of our creative power that's really lived, as something that is shaped over time, but also how it can reshape us and how we can retell our stories. And I think this brings us into your new book, Respell Your Reality. And I'd like for you to tell me all about that. Tell our listeners what Respelling Your Reality is about.
But it's about all of this, right? It's everything we're talking about here. It's everything you've just said. It's that remembering that through the words we speak, our perception of the world and of ourselves, and the rhythmic nature of who we are as a human, who we are in relationship to the cosmos, who we are in relationship to the seasons, to the moon, to Venus, to anything that is beautiful, that is cyclical, right? We have this beautiful rhythmic intelligence. When we remember all of those things, we also remember that we've got choice. And I think that's, for me, is what Respell Your Reality is about.
Since recording this episode, Lisa's beautiful new book, Respell Your Reality, is now officially out in the world and available everywhere books are sold, and I'm currently immersed in it myself. It's a rich and evocative yet practical guide to creativity, ritual, feminine wisdom, and self-creation, and its themes flow all throughout the conversation you're about to hear.
So much of our lived experience is that we think that it's happening to us. And obviously that keeps us super compliant. Like, I get it. I get why that we think that. The societal spell has been really strong, but thankfully, like, we're stronger. We're stronger because of what you were saying. Like, we are creatrixes. Like, we have the capacity to create life, to create home, to create atmosphere, to create song, to create art, beauty, and our reality. And for me, it was very much, I was writing a fiction series at the time, and it's a very modern, feminine take on quantum leaps, I guess. And so it's a time traveling, it's magical realism, right? And so I was writing that, but then just as I was writing it, just realizing, like, this is what we're all doing. Like, I'm writing a fiction book about what we all have the capacity to do. Like, it needs to be a non-fiction, but we need to remember that we are capable of this. It's not just a concept. It's not just an imaginal. And we do need our imaginations. And again, when we're taught that our imaginations are not to be trusted, or we're taught that they're frivolous, or we're taught that it doesn't, actually, that's just a waste of time. Of course we are, because that disconnects us from our magic, our imagination, specifically as women. When felt in the body, is what creates capacity in our body for us to then create whatever the frick we want. Like, whatever that looks like. And I don't mean in a very glib, like, manifest your life in 10 days way. I mean in a very real, felt sense, And I think that's for me is the true essence of the book. It's just about recognizing that we get to choose. We get to choose what our perception is. We get to choose the direction in which we want to go.
Yes. And in this book, you're inspired by several women. Are they wild roses?
Of course.
Of course they are.
And I think, and so in the book.
So you're inspired by their imaginations as well. So you're kind of feeding off of what came before, and now you're bringing it forward in your own way. Because you also illustrated that.
I did.
Yeah, beautifully, I must say.
It was a blast. It was so joyful. And look, I've been told 1,000 times, by the way, like probably 1,000 times, that my art is not like spiritual enough, that it's too playful, that it's not, basically it doesn't come in a lovely pastel and like various like well packaged spiritual that you'll package that you'll find on a shelf, right? Good. And good, because that's my playful expression of these women. So the book, it uses the 8 phases of the moon, and for each phase of to explain about our rhythmic nature, so that we've got just not a structure, but a framework, like a kind of container that flows, that we can recognize in our own body, right? Yeah. So it's like the moon phases that we can replicate through the creative process. For each of those moon phases, I've called in what I've called a moon maven, like a woman from history who really defied what society told her was real, so that we can see how she created, curated, conjured her reality in a world that was never, again, set up in her favour, right? But as an artist, as a woman that was expressing herself. So, yeah, there's a complete variation of awesome, awesome women, which is just lovely anyway, right? We just love to be introduced to there's some you'll know, maybe, like Frida Kahlo, and there's some you might not know, like Madame Yvonne, who was like one of the first women to put colour into photography, and colour was considered crass. And I love her because she's like one of the reasons that I now want more colour in my life,
Yeah.
right? And I think for us all to have some permission to, like, we can play with colour, like we're allowed to, even if you're spiritual, it doesn't all have to be pastels and crystals, I promise. And that's great if you do, right, and I think that's the message of the book, but it's also just the message of, like you say, of life, right? It's just these women showing us what's possible, for one. It's why in this book, but in the immersions that I do online, like the kind of Saturday club, which is essentially where I call in like women to help us work with the Venus cycle, to help us then understand that what was possible, what is possible. We get to really study their stories and understand their stories as a reflection of ours, so that we create our future self that already exists. Mm-hmm. And it's just beautiful. And we work with that rhythmic kind of nature to understand that.
Yeah. Well, there's, again, a couple things as you're speaking that come to mind for me. And one is, you're telling me about how you tell the stories of other women, and then it becomes your story. And there's this beautiful cycle of emerging that comes from it. So it's wonderful that, you bring this forward and that we look at it in the light and not in the shadows. And the idea that you can create your own reality is, well, I mean, as a yoga educator, we talk about illusion rather than reality, Reality is an illusion. It's the Maya. So then it brings that into, okay, so if our reality is actually an illusion, then what are the things that we can add to our existence to influence that so that we live the lives that we want to live? And everything begins with a thought, with your imagination, and then you put some action behind it. So you're talking about these rhythmic cycles. These are the ways that women can bring action into, say, take from imagination, thought, inspiration, and then plug it into what's happening in nature. Can you speak a little more about that?
Oh, yeah. That's and that's essentially it. That's essentially. Okay. I know, because it's like we don't need to overcomplicate things. I think that's something that, again, like, especially self-help and self-development worlds, they just want to overcomplicate everything. Like what you've just expressed then around the yogic principles, but also just around letting it all be, like recognizing it's all an illusion. So actually, anything we're speaking on the daily, we get to shape, like shapes and forms what's coming next. And so this rhythmic intelligence for me, and I found it because I've got endometriosis. I've experienced, I'm in a bendy body. I have elastano. I never know how to say it. It's EDS, I call it. EDS. But it's like,
yeah. I looked at it and I was like, I'm going to call it EDS.
Yeah, me too. All the time, people are like, "Is that? Yep, that's it. That's the one." Yeah. All I know is that I've got a very bendy body, which is great for some things, obviously, and which meant I was great at yoga until I realised that that's why I was great at yoga. By the way,
just as a frame for what we're discussing, you and I have both of those things in common.
Oh wow! Really?
I don't know if I'm EDS, but I've definitely been a little more hypermobile than the other way around.
Right.
In the body of a temple dancer rather than a Viking.
Exactly that. Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I've had endometriosis.
So these things, and you don't have to look too far to find your people, is what I would say. Because if we're into similar things, there's a really good chance it's because we've been trying to navigate a world that has not been set up for our bodies, for our imaginative ways, for the way in which our bodies function, right? So I found when I had endometriosis, it's a really long story how I discovered that, but in finding that, I've had to create my own reality. In the sense, I had to create a life that meant this body could exist in it. So because society does not really allow, like the linear one, the one that's straight line, that's 9 to 5. Like I was bleeding more days than I wasn't. There's no way I could show up the way people were asking me to. I was working in TV, so it was all very like, there's no excuses. And it was in a time when there really was, this stuff wasn't spoken about, right? So keeping all of that in mind and then recognizing that, okay, so with those things, you either can be a victim or you can be like, right, I've got to find a way. And I got asked the other day, this beautiful young team of people are making a movie about endometriosis. And thank goodness for them, right? Like that these young minds are getting it and are turning it into art. But they were asking me, like, why do you concentrate on the positive part of a menstrual cycle, for instance? Like, why do you find... I'm like, why do you concentrate on that so that rather than talk about endometriosis and all of those things? I'm like, because that's where the power is. That's how I took my power back. Because I recognize that actually when I understand the cyclical nature of my body through my menstrual cycle for one, but then recognizing it in relationship with the moon, then recognizing my body in relationship with Venus, then the seasons, then the and then out and out and out and out and out, you realize you get to, like, everything has this beautiful rhythm. And it's never going to be the same as someone else's. Like, we can recognize the patterns, but it's going to be a completely different rhythmic experience. And when we understand that and we create in time with our own rhythmic intelligence, with it, in relationship with, like, we understand that there are times of the month when you're able to show up, when you're able to speak out loud. Like, if we did this when I was premenstrual, there'd be no words. But in terms of understanding myself, knowing that I won't book those things at those times, knowing that I tend to myself with a little bit of love and care versus like punishing this one for not showing up the way I want it to in order to fit in. And that's not to say I do that much anymore, but I'm human. So there's still definitely a part of me that when I have to say no to a thing because my body just can't show up for it, feels a bit flaky. I can understand all the things, but the human part of me still is like, ugh. But that's why we have to just cut ourselves some slack, cut ourselves some grace. And when we understand this rhythmic nature, that's where I found the grace. That's where I found that little bit of slack. And so I was able to then kind of map that onto the creative phases. And as someone that's creative, like, oh, actually, that shows up in exactly the same way when I create, whether that's a book, whether that's a piece of art. And you see these, and again, if you've got EDS, if you've got anything in your body, there's a good chance that you may have some neurodivergent tendencies too, which means that you can also pattern match a lot more. And these are all magical skills that we as women have been told, like, make us mad, make us, like, you know, mentally, like, and they're actually, no, that's your magic.
Yeah, it's what sets you apart from everybody else, but that's what's beautiful, right? You know?
And I'm not diagnosing, I'm just saying that there are, like, tendencies that show up for me that are very, like, a pattern recognition that, you know, I've often been like, whoa, I'm so magic. And yes, I am. And
pattern recognition is a sign of very high intelligence.
I'll take that, Sonia. Thanks.
Yeah. Because it's how we construct our world and we make associations. And I think as women, where our world is shaped around often our relationships, you know, and that can change over time. I talk a lot, I think, in the same way that you do about the maiden, the mother, and the crone and the phases of life. And I've been using the term a lot and I'm going to use it again. So I'm putting out there #young crone.
Yes.
Because that's
I
where
love
I'm
that.
at. That's where I'm
God,
at.
if one more person speaks about perimenopause, I will lose. Like, and obviously it's the term that's used, but we need to change that up. Young crone, yes, please. Love that.
Yeah. And I think that also, you know, if we honor our bodies, right, and we honor our cycles, then we are literally what we call in the flow. Yes. And that's a really wonderful thing. But here's the thing that I want to get into. The idea that we have this flow of creativity, it's very Shakti, it's very potential energy, anything could happen. This is wonderful. But what do we do with that when we can't harness it? You know, so if we want to be able to really come into our power, isn't there a discussion around putting it into a container and holding it? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, that's the premise of Contain Her Magic. So I couldn't bypass that.
Oh my goodness, are you joking? I love this. This is exactly it. You know, in Self Sorcery Oracle deck, I've got a card that says contain, don't tame. Right? Your fire, for instance. Like, so when we contain it, it gets to build. So, like, of course, like you say, so much of and look, nothing's wrong, by the way, like, in terms of so much of the conversation around feminine energy, feminine wisdom, it's still very new, old conversations, if that makes sense. It's still new conversations about a very old magic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So of course we're going to just be working our way through. So we're not going to punish anything that we've maybe said about it in the past, but we are going to recognize that if we let ourselves be so in the flow, and I've recognized this in my own experience as someone like you, who's, I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a this, I'm a that. And then I found this divine, like, feminine flow in my body. I felt it and it was delicious. And of course I didn't want to not be there. Like, I don't care for structures. But if a riverbank doesn't have banks, where does it go? Right? Like,
That's it.
And the deal is, again, it comes back to that choice. We get to choose what those banks look like. Sometimes those banks look like they're outside of myself, and sometimes they look like my husband. They look like my big Viking husband, right? Who has to hold some space for this one to be in a creative flow. Sometimes when I get a little bit more independent, that looks like this vessel, right? And in Venus, I talk about it as this is a Venusian vessel. And then in other ways, it's creating the way I do with Saturday Club, a 5-month container. Like, we can keep that thing going forever because I love it so much. Or we can hold it, because when you contain something, it can grow in power. Like, it gets chance to get stronger. It gets chance to become more potent, right? And so with that potency, you then get, because what it also creates is a bit of space in which you can then work out what to do with it. Because I think when you're in that, like, divine feminine flow, lovely. Oh, it feels gorgeous. Like, of course, if we even get the experience of that, it's like when we're writing, if you're a writer or if you're an artist, like, hours can turn into days and you not notice, and it's glorious. But actually, if I haven't got a deadline, that book's never getting written. Not really. And it's very important to recognize what that container is for you, like how you shape and form it. Because, and I write in the book, like, make that time for dreaming, make that time for imagination and play. And then things will only get done if they're contained. Things will only reach the point of full expression if at some point they've been contained. Because in that container, things can get refined, things can get aligned, we can figure things out before we then put it out in the world. Because otherwise we might make a piece of art, but it's not had that time to potentize. It's not had that time to really live into what it actually is for. And I love people that are just like riffing and sharing on the fly, all of that stuff. And there's also place for both. And I think that comes from containment. Like, when you contain your magic, you're potentizing that magic. Yeah. So like, that's why I love, like, the name of this podcast. It's so good.
Thank you. Well, that's it. It gives it some direction. So, instead of just floating in the breeze, it's beautiful, it's lovely, but then what could you do with it if you gave it a little bit more structure and a little bit more, well, I think an opportunity, like you said, to sit with it. So some space, but then also this space gives you an opportunity to say, well, I love that that's in my container, but after a little while, I'm taking that out. Yeah. And then you boil it down, you put it in the cauldron.
But it's exactly and then you boil it That's down. What this container is. It's exactly what we're doing here.
Yeah. To make your magic potion. And then you potentize it, right? Yeah. You give it some power. And just in keeping with that also, there is this discussion. Now, I haven't read your new book because I haven't been able to get my hands on it yet.
You're not out there yet. Yeah. Soon.
But what really sparked me was, it's funny, a few months ago, I was really listening for a second time to self-sorcery. And there was this discussion around devotion and discipline. And that's when I said, I'd love to have a discussion with her. This could get juicy. Because everything else I'm going, yeah. This woman and I, wow. Yeah. Except for that. And I went, maybe we could have an interesting discussion about that. So I think at the time you were talking about being rather in devotion than in discipline. And then I feel like through this book, tell me if I'm wrong, that you started to look at it differently. So I'd love to hear about that.
Well, and for one, like, please never be afraid to change your mind. Even if you've written books, even if you've put it in books, like, none of that is stone. Like, they tell you it is. None of it is. Like, let it just all be out there. I still have a very firm leaning towards self-devotion over self-discipline, definitely. But that's because of the story I had in regards to what discipline was. Right, I thought it was all like whips and chains and, and whistles and all sorts of things. Right, so I had a very, like what discipline looked like. I'm not good when someone gives me rules. Like, I'm not good at playing by someone else's like set of rules. I'm not. I'm an only child as well, so I don't play games well. So there's like a lot of patterns that led to that. Right, to that thought process for me. But what I mean by that is, in terms of self-devotion, is like when we recognize that we're not doing it, like people go, oh, the pain of being an artist, or you have to starve to be an artist, or you have to be poor to be an artist. For me, that's like, the story is like negative, right? Like, so then we have like this, and around discipline, it's like, oh, it's got, like, in order to get a thing done. Like I said, if I haven't got a deadline, it won't get done. That's discipline to a certain extent. But if I don't make the process devotional, if I don't make the act of showing up an act of devotion to myself, but to the piece of art that I'm creating, then for me, that does feel painful. That does feel like, oh, I have to show up to this. Now, if I have to do anything, I will rebel against it. That's my jam. Like, that's not necessarily how it is for everyone, but that's definitely my jam. So for me, it started there. So it started with like, okay, so everything has to become an act of self-devotion in order for the whole process to feel delicious. But then, if you're going to apply that to art, and that's what happened as I was doing Respell Reality, is like, if you're applying that to art, not every bit of it is delicious. Especially that bit when, if you're writing a book, for instance, you're at 30,000 words and you've got to do 60. When you're there and you're like, you've got a choice to make, and you're like, am I going to just sack it off because it makes no sense here? I don't know what's coming, but it's taken me this long to get here. How do I stay here with it? How do I discipline? Right? Yeah. And I still wouldn't call it discipline because I don't like the word, right? But I also do recognize that, for me, I call that showing up. We can call it whatever we want, like, but I have to show up for myself, but for the art. And that's the piece that means that it turns into something that then gets shared, versus it's an idea that stays on my laptop forever. It's the bit that overrides the inner critic. It's the bit that overrides all of the noise of like, oh, someone's done it before. Oh, what if? What will someone say? It overrides that because you're still showing up on the daily, to the screen, to the paper, to the art.
So the discipline could actually be a container.
Ooh, I love that.
Right? And maybe, okay, I will. Maybe if we look at it in terms of masculine and feminine energy. So I spoke about the Shakti. Maybe the discipline is that male energy, that which is that holds, that gives it structure, that is, a little more Shiva. And the two of them together are this beautiful marriage of energies that make creation, that make something happen, that hold all of the potential, but within something that we can, and here's where I'm going to get a little out there, that we can actually appreciate and interact with in this 3D reality. Right?
Absolutely.
Because maybe some of what else is going on in us, maybe our inspiration, we're hooked up to something more cosmic, something more divine that doesn't necessarily have a place as solidly as something that we can form around. Like we are the form for that. And then we take that and then we put it out into a different form. And it's it's similar to what you were describing about taking the stories of the women before you and then
Yeah.
assimilating it and filtering it through you, through Lisa, and then putting it out into the world again. So you're birthing something anew with this, but you need that container, the
Yeah.
body. And I do want to have this discussion with you as well, is that
Mm.
our bodies are containers, right? From the very principle of that we are the vessels of creation, that we can, as I mentioned, be the container for the divine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our body is temple. I fully believe in that, so my
Yeah, me
discipline
too.
is, I get up in the morning and I have my routine and I feel a lot better when I'm in that. But anyway, that's just because I feel that the physical and the spiritual, of course, the emotional, mental sits inside of that. They all go together. And it brings me to this idea of containment
Mm.
inside of our body. So we talk about being hypermobile.
Yeah, I
So
know.
as a somatic educator yourself, do
Mm.
you get into that with people in terms of physical containment that allows you to have good alignment, good
Yes.
structure, but more space? Like if you
Yeah.
hold a posture in yoga in a way that is well aligned and you're using your muscles and your skeleton to frame,
Mm-hmm.
actually you're creating more space inside of yourself. That's how I feel it, and that's
I
how I
love
try
it.
to teach it to others. So how do you see that? How do you embody that?
But I think there's a few points. I think what happens, and again, I'm going to speak personally, but from women that I have spoken to in regards to people who have bendy bodies, and I'll call it that because the hypermobile EDS spectrum is large. But if you have a bendy body, then there's a chance that you disconnect a lot easier, like that you like from everything, like because there's a lot of pain in your body because you don't know how to be with it, you don't know how to be in relationship with it as this way. So how would inspiration land in a body that's been disconnected? How, like, so the what you're talking about in terms of the daily ritual, the daily like routines and stuff, they're rituals, right? And when we ritualize, that for me creates the discipline. When we ritualize the act of showing up, I show this body, look, whatever you're feeling today, we'll find a way, but we are going to sit at the desk. Like whether that's we've got to put a lot of cushions behind us, whether we've got to just set a timer for 10 minutes, however that is, we've got to find a way to show the art, to show ourselves that we mean business for ourselves, right? So that then the muse, the mavens, like the women that have gone before, like cosmic kind of
Mhm.
magic, whatever it is, has a place to land.
It's
Because if it
alignment.
doesn't, right, exactly, right. So, and if you're not here, if I'm not here, like it can get me in the shower, of course it can, right? But I haven't got pen and paper in the shower. Like, so if I'm here, it takes me seriously. And
Mhm.
by it, I mean art. By it, I mean creation. By it, I mean she. By it, I mean me. Like, I mean me. I take myself seriously if I turn up to the page, to the art, to myself
Yeah.
daily.
And that's the message that you're sending out. So you're on that frequency. So
Yes,
essentially you're saying this matters. This is
yes.
important to me. And so
Right.
I'm going to create a space or a container for
Yeah.
that to happen. Yeah.
And it's true for when we even think about like Virginia Woolf, like saying you gotta have a room of one's own. A woman has to have a room of one's own. Yeah, it's a container. You need to have a container for the art to work. And if you
Mhm.
and then you don't have to have a room, but like this is the room. Like you said, this is the temple. The body is the temple. The body is the room. But unless we are tending to it, unless we are showing that there's a sustainability, and that's why the rhythmic intelligence is so important. That's why, in the book, it's like, please know that there are built-in periods of rest, whether that's seasonal, whether that's like the moon, she rests, like
Mhm.
Venus, like she goes underground, like she goes retrograde. Like there are times when she is not visible. And there's reasons for that. Like it is showing us over and over again that we don't have to be on, we don't have to be posting on bloody social media every single day. You don't have to be feeding someone else's algorithm. You need to be really tending to this one's rhythm so that what comes through, what comes up, what comes out is joyful, is or not, is grief, is rage, whatever. But the act of is also experiential versus like, oh, I am just, and the word create copy or create content doesn't sit entirely well with me if there's not joy in the process, if there's not felt sensation in the process. If it feels like it's just another job you're doing, then I don't understand what we're here for, personally.
Bringing aliveness to it. Yeah.
Yes.
And we talk about the cycle of, going underground. And that brings me to the myth of Demeter and Persephone and Hades. And I know that you discussed that. And it's something that I'd like to look at with you as well, because it's something that I resonate with quite deeply. At the beginning of my podcast, there is a bit of music, and it's a song that I wrote around that. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I've heard
That's
it, but I
right.
didn't know it was you.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's me. And it's called Return to Me.
Yum.
Yeah. And what's really weird is I wrote that. Well, it's not weird. I wrote, well, it's weird, but it's not that. I wrote that several years ago with no intention behind it at all. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to do a podcast and then I'll put this as the theme music. No, it just is that once this project came into fruition where I realized, okay, this is going to take form. I started thinking about it and I went, that's why that exists. Yeah. So,
That's proper magic. I love that.
and I'm so grateful that I was able to make that connection and that click. And I think that that's the process of coming, you talk about going into the stories of other women. And I'm sure you've done this too, go back into your own story at some point and then reinvent it moving forward. So, but back to the underworld. Let's go to
Let's
the
go there.
underworld, Lisa.
Sorry, what was
Jump
the
on that train.
question? What's
Well,
the
the
question?
question is, just to discuss that mythology a little bit in terms of the shadow side, right? In terms of, we're talking about being inspired and creative and lovely
Yeah.
and doing all the wonderful things. But when it gets a little bit darker, in terms of where does the magic come from? Does it come from the light or does it come from the dark?
Well, I've got a lot of Scorpio placements in my astrological chart, so I am very comfy in the dark. And I'll say it in pretty much every book. I think the dark is where we grow our strongest roots. And that's why Venus has been so brilliant, is because actually Venus has shown me a way in consciously to the underworld, a way to traverse the terrain and proof that you do get out. Because for me, personally, I'd live there. Like, I've experienced so much death in my own familial line that it would be very easy for me to stay in grief. It would be very easy for me to stay in darkness. Whereas for a lot of people, I know that grief and darkness is really scary. Like, for me, I'd build a house there. Like, I would build a house there and I'd get really, really comfy in the dark. The light is the bit that scares me. Like I say, and the Venus cycle is so brilliant at that because it has a built-in darkness period almost. Like, it's
So
like
the evening star, morning star that you were
yeah, so
referring to
there's
earlier.
a time span, and it's roughly 3-ish. Everything about Venus is ish. I love that about her. Like, she doesn't have any specifics, even though astrologers try and pin dates and times on her. She's very ishy, and I love that about her. But like a 3-ish for possibly month period of time when she's no longer mornings, but when she's not visible in the sky as morning star, where she, in the center of that darkness period, she becomes evening star, and then she takes another bit of time before she actually appears in the sky again as evening star. And we're talking about Venus, the planet here, right? Like, so this part of the cycle of Venus, like, there's this, and we went through it, and I went through it with a group of like 60 women. And to do that, I held an immersion through that period, and to do it so consciously, because what I recognize is in that place is where we meet Ma of the dark matter, who I call Ma of the dark matter. And it's this, and in the story of Inanna, she gets hung on a meat hook, and that's unfortunate. We don't have to do that, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But But thankfully, we do get to come into the dark. And if we do it consciously, it preps us for the times when it might come and sideswipe us, when darkness, grief, rage might come and sideswipe us, because we know it. It's known in our bodies. It's felt in our bodies. Mm-hmm. Which is why, like I say, I love this going into it consciously, knowing that, right, okay, so for this 3-ish month period, I'm being asked to recognize what matters. Again, it's another container, right? It's a container within a container. It's like this, there's an 18-month cycle within an 8-year cycle. And this is like a 3-ish month cycle within that, where you have to sit with yourself. You have to sit with the parts. You've descended. If you follow her cycle, you spend 8 months descending, and you come into this space, and she says, what matters? Like all of the things that all the things that were coming up for you in those last 8 months, what really matters? So that as you ascend, and we are now in that evening star phase, but as you ascend, you're like, oh, you're rooted because there's truth, because all that's left is truth, because that's what she'll do. She'll just hold a black obsidian mirror up to you, and in that reflection, all you can see is your truth. And that's not comfortable. It's not. But then you have to get cool with not being comfortable, which for me then reflected in our creative cycle. That's the bit where we're like, oh shit, this doesn't matter. None of this matters. It's like, no, what does matter? What does matter about this art? So that you stay with it, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you think no one's ever going to read it, watch it, look at it, and care for it. And then it's the same for ourselves and our bodies. It's like, what matters here? Yeah. That's all she asks. So that when we ascend, when we inevitably come out, which, like I say, is joyful, because you remember that, oh, we do get to go in. We do have to be there, but we also do get to leave. But we leave only with what matters. And you can pick up some of that stuff if you want to, that you left behind. But chances are you won't want to, because you'll care much more about what's left, which is only truth, which is only real, which is only what matters.
Yeah. It's like the cycle of transformation where something needs to die.
Yeah.
So you take it to the underworld and leave it there and reemerge into the light with, like what you say, with what matters. And that's what you bring forward. And that's the beautiful cycle of rebirth. Right.
But you can see, that's what I mean about our rhythmic, cyclical nature. There are stories in all religions, in all cultures, in all kind of experiences, like you say, of death and rebirth. We have to know it. We have to have felt it in our body, whether it's real death, or whether it's the death of letting go of a story that we've been told about ourselves, or we've been told about the world, where we think someone's going to come save us, and then we realize they're not gonna. And actually, we've got to save ourselves. And that's why we've got to create our own reality, or that someone on the internet who doesn't pay your bills is not in charge of what you create. They don't get to have an opinion on what you create. I mean, they can, but don't let it touch you unless they're going to pay you to have an opinion. And that's the energy that you leave with. It's no, that's the rebirth part, the Renaissance part. If we're going to go back to our French kind of connections, you can see it in history. And that's what's so beautiful. When you look at the early 1900s, and then you recognize how many women were doing incredibly creative things. And you're like, wait, why are we not taught about that? Well, why is that not in my history lessons? Well, of course, they're not going to teach you that. They don't want you to remember you're powerful, creative, magical. So it is so fascinating. And when you do realize that, you can't unrealize it. That's what I will say. And that's what I think the underworld does do, is that you can die to things. And that's the wisdom that then comes as you're rooted in that, because there's wisdom now as you're coming out, as you're moving into that evening star Venus, which is the wise one. It's I know what's going on here, so I'm not bitter. I'm just going to create in relationship to myself and to what I discovered down there that matters.
Yeah, and to that experience. And I think that oftentimes in the shadow, there's the gift waiting to be claimed. That there's an awful lot of magic in that shadow, So where you have grief, well, it can just teach you more about love in the end, right? And
it's only because you love so hard that you can experience grief, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly. One puts value on the other. And again,
Yes.
so in fact, this cycle it's beautiful. It's a beautiful dance. And it's not always easy when you're in the
No.
underworld and you're in the darker phase. But as you said, you will reemerge, you know? Yeah. Lisa, is there something about you that you would like to share that might surprise people?
Well, not really, because I think I'm pretty much an open book. Like, what surprises people is that I love reality TV, and that I can be as deep as the ocean and I can be wildly shallow. So that definitely does surprise people, but I don't think that would surprise people because I'm quite open about that. Oh, it's a fascinating question. I love that. And I haven't got an answer for you.
Well, I will admit that, you do share a lot. And I think that that is such a gift because it's real. And you speak about the things that are taboo and you speak about the things that are unspoken and you bring light to the shadows and you do it so gracefully and with so much artful expression and devotion,
Thank
so this is a beautiful thing. But that's what prompted me to ask you that question
you.
was I thought, well, is there something more if I go one?
I don't think so. Honestly, I don't. I
Uh,
think like
mm,
I shared at the weekend with some people. They were like, "Oh, do you ever get cross?" I'm like, "Oh, well, if someone crosses me, like their
yeah.
name's in the freezer and like they're dead to me," and someone was like, "Do you mean that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm joking, or am I? You just don't know." Like, so there is that, like that dark. Like I say, there is a dark humor where people sometimes don't know whether I'm joking or not. I like that. I like to
Hmm.
keep that. So
Always keep them
I like to
guessing.
keep people guessing on that
Yeah, nice.
one.
We've talked about remembering your magic, that
Mm,
this is the essence of, I believe, what the creative process brings
mm,
to people, but to women in particular. Being able to get into your inner world and then bring it into the outer world. From the
mm.
underworld to what is that? The overworld? The upper,
I don't know. Middle. Who knows? Who
Middle
knows?
Earth. That's the Hobbit.
Who knows?
Um, but so this idea of remembering your magic, I think is very key. And I'd like to know, Lisa, what is magic for you?
Oh, it's such a gorgeous question. I don't speak in sound bites, right? So it's like there's not a tried and tested answer to this. And if you ask me on any given day, any given hour, actually, that could change, and does change. But the very truth of it is that it's not. Yes, it can be spells, right? Yes, it can be potions and all of the gorgeous things that are associated with magic. But for me, it's remembering the essence of who you are as a woman, as a human, who remembers her capacity, I think, like whether that's as an artist, whether that's as a creatrix. Like my favourite thing is sitting in circles with women. And as they share, they remember that, oh, wait, I am powerful. Oh, wait, I used to create. I can create. I can make art. I can do this. Like remembering our capacity and capability to curate a life, to conjure up, whether that is actual life, whether that is like a manifestation of something that you decided you wanted at the weekend. The capacity of that, the breadth of that, the spectrum of what magic can look and feel like. But it is that remembrance as a feeling. And what I mean by that is it's us put together, like back together, which is why I'm so passionate about women's stories, I guess. It's like, it's the collecting back of all the places our power's been taken from us. And like remembering ourselves, like putting our bodies, ourselves back together through our rhythmic knowing, through what it is we know, so that everything becomes possible again. Right? Like you felt darkness, you know darkness, you also know light, you also know like what you're capable of versus what you're told you're capable of. And that the more you are, the more you let, and like, and we talked a little bit in this conversation about transformation, but actually recognizing that there's nothing to do to transform yourself. all you're ever letting yourself do through the rhythmic intelligence, through the art, through whatever it is you choose to do, is let more of yourself come online to yourself, right? Like let more of yourself become available to yourself. So the fact that I love to watch like reality TV, and that I love France, and that I love to make colourful art, and that I love to read books about women in history, all of those things make me magic, make me whole, because that's what's contained in this vessel, in this particular Venusian vessel. And that will change on the daily as well.
Sounds like real magic to me. That's
I love that.
so beautiful, so well said, and so inspirational. And I'm wondering if you'd like to just take a moment to talk to us about what you've got cooking in the cauldron. What's boiling over in the next season? So
Oh,
the book Respell Your Reality is coming out,
da,
and
da, da, da.
have you got other projects on the horizon that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I have actually one that I'm just so excited about, and it's because I've spent like 5 months in the underworld with these women. Not five, we did a 5 month container, but there was this 3 month in the middle. And what became very clear to me personally is how important it is for us to write ourselves back in. I've written it in books, I've written it in places, but so I'm creating a Saturday Club summer school, but it's going to be much more than that. But it's not summer school really, but it's a Parisian literary salon where I want women to write, but I want women to be writing from their rhythmic nature, from their truth, from their bodies. Do you know Hélène Cixous? Hélène Cixous. She's this amazing French, not Algerian, but she lives in France. Feminist theory, but also beautiful, poetic, who just basically says the word isn't his. Right, and when she's talking about that. She's not talking about. She's very clear on feminine writing. Right, she wants us to remember how to speak in spirals, how to realize we don't have to do it in that very linear way. So when she's talking about his, she's not talking about. I mean, maybe she is, because she does talk about all things that are phallic centric, right? But she's also talking about like the overculture, telling us how to write, how to show up, how to tell our story, what our story should look like, whether that's in publishing, but whether that's in our existence as a beautiful woman. And so the project, the Saturday Club, is called Write Yourself In, and I'm literally writing it into existence right now. And I'm going to go to Paris and I'm going to live it into existence, so that the next thing that I'm writing is in that energy. And then I want to write with women every week. Like, we're going to show up and we're just going to be on screen together, and we're going to write, and then we're going to do salons, and then we're going to just do some really gorgeous ways and expression that is just going to be amazing.
Wow, that really does sound amazing.
And it's the evening star Venus phase. So it's this really the wisest part of us. Like, all the Saturday clubs are in kind of sync with a certain phase of Venus cycle. And that'll take us right up until she goes retrograde. So, yeah.
So if somebody would like more information about that, or your book, or of all I know you've got so many other programs, but would your website be the right place to go to learn more?
So I'm on Instagram. I don't love social media, but if you need to find me on social media, it's at Sassy Lisa Lister. The website is lisalister.com. And that project specifically is called Write Yourself In, and it starts in May.
Wonderful. Well, in May, I'm actually going to be in the UK, and I'll be at the Big Retreat Festival in Pembrokeshire, Wales. In Wales, yeah. And on the 24th of May, I'm giving a workshop that is my signature workshop called Containhermagic. It's a mind-body coaching experience. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I'll also be giving a sacred flow yoga class. So if you happen to be anywhere near Wales, Pembrokeshire, Wales, then come
How
on
long
over.
are you in the UK for?
I'm actually there for the better part of a month. Lisa, thank you so much for being here with us today. I've been looking forward to this conversation now for weeks, and I'm so happy that it took form, that it's materialized. And I hope that we can stay in touch and that we have comments on this, because I want listeners to reach out and let us know what they thought about everything we talked about today, and also your books, your material, and whatever they have been reshaped by that has come from you. That's an invitation out to everyone who's listening today to do that, to share that. And once again, thank you so, so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
What I loved so much about this conversation is that it reminds us that creativity isn't just inspiration, it's relationship. A relationship with our bodies, with rhythm, with devotion, with the parts of ourselves we're continually shaping and recreating over time. And maybe that's the real art. Not just opening to magic, but learning how to stay with it. If there's a woman in your life walking a creative path or trying to reconnect with her creative fire, I'd love for you to share this episode with her. You'll find the links to Lisa's offerings and to mine in the show notes. And before you go, I'd like to invite you to take a moment and close your eyes. Take a breath. Feel your body. Feel yourself here. Remember who you are. Reimagine what's possible. And reinvent the story. And with the feeling of aliveness inside of you, say to yourself, return to me. Well, my lovelies, I hope you feel uplifted and inspired. Remember, your fire is sacred. Hold it, nurture it, and let it light your path without burning out. And I hope that you'll join me for the next episode of Contain Her Magic, a sacred space to honor your path, discover your unique gifts, and to unapologetically embody your truth and your joy. I'm Sonia Bayon. Until next time, burn bright and hold on to your magic.